Cocoa remains a significant cash crop in Nigeria, predominantly produced by small-scale farmers in the country's southwest region. Historically, cocoa served as a major source of foreign earnings until the 1970s, when the discovery of petroleum shifted the focus away from agriculture. Despite various challenges from its introduction in 1807 to the present, efforts by successive governments and the resilience of cocoa farmers have sustained its production. To better optimize productivity and ensure fair prices for farmers and high economic returns for the government, the Cocoa Marketing Board (CMB) was established in 1947. However, the goal was not totally achieved as pricing policy weren't favorable, discouraging farmers from producing export crops, and that eventually led to the board's abolition in 1986. This resulted in reduced yields and lower quality cocoa beans. Meanwhile, the Millennium era witnessed a shift in farmers' focus towards more economically viable crops like oil palm due to the high cost and intensive care required for cocoa production. Cocoa production faces several obstacles, including limited access to fertilizers, unfavorable climate conditions, pest infestation, poor infrastructure, and land shortages. Also, herders' attacks on farmers have deterred farmers from expanding their farmlands. According to research, despite challenges, cocoa production has empowered many farmers and more stakeholders in the value chain, improving their living standards, enabling them to provide education for their children, cover medical expenses, and build better homes. Concerning the future of cocoa farming in Nigeria, there are mixed opinions among farmers. Some are hopeful that government reinvestment and addressing current challenges can revive the sector's past success. Others are pessimistic due to the persistent issues and the trend of farmers shifting to other crops. Regardless, hope remains for the sector. Solutions like improving land-labor relations, infrastructure, and financial support could revitalize cocoa production, reduce out migration, stabilize prices, and enhance value chain development, ultimately securing a brighter future for Nigerian cocoa farming and its stakeholders. Ojai Michael, reporting for Silk News.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Thank you, Michael Olja, for that wonderful report on cocoa industry in Ghana. For 32 years, the world's second biggest producer of the chocolate ingredient, cocoa, Ghana has depended on external funds for its cocoa industry. But now the country says that it will look inward in raising funds for its cocoa industry. How did it come to that decision? What happened? And what will be the implication of Ghana looking domestically for funds for its cocoa industry? This morning, joining the conversation virtually will be someone who will speak to the matter, and he is Collins Nweke. He joins from Brussels, Belgium. Good morning.
Very good morning to you, Blessing.
I like how sharp and loud your voice is. It means that we're in for a great conversation this morning. No need to ask how you're doing. Your voice tells it all.
Sorry, there is this echo on the background that is distorting, the audio. I didn't quite get the question.
As a question, I'm saying there is no need to ask how you're doing because your voice tells that you're well. And for the echo, I think you could just listen and not try to watch and listen from your device, because that's where the echo seems to be coming from.
Okay. Although it was improved, I did hear
Is
your
it better now?
last statement, yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at Ghana's cocoa industry. For a very long time, the country has depended on foreign funding for its cocoa industry for some reasons which we'll look at. Now the country is saying that it will look inward it is ditching foreign funding for its cocoa industry. Before we get to the implications and how they arrived at that decision to ditch foreign funding, let's look at why the world's second biggest producer of cocoa has depended on foreign funding for the cocoa industry in Ghana. Could you speak to that, please?
Right. Well, obviously, there is this tendency to look at external funding, funding beyond your internally generated resources, to finance operations from a negative, perspective. I think that is wrong. That is wrong because obviously foreign funding of, Ghana Cocoa Board has, to some extent, been a blessing. Let us not, forget the fact that it has as well been a cause, a sort of a hindrance in many ways, because he who pays the piper actually dictates the tone. But Ghana also has a responsibility to look out for its own interests and manage its resources in a manner that is in the best interest of the people. Now, as the Cocoa Board was announcing the fact that they are actually ditching international funding for the Cocoa Board, the opposition in Ghana is actually drawing the attention to the fact that the reverse is actually the case, which means that they are saying that it is actually the international funders that are ditching Ghana because of the high debt burden. They have not been able to service their debts so very well, and so they have not actually approved the new application. I believe that the truth is somewhere in between. So all in all, there are reasons to believe that indeed the foreign funding has been of immense benefit to Ghana. But on the other hand, it is to be expected that the foreign funder will protect its own interest, because they're not there for philanthropy. They are there to make some money. But Ghana has failed so far to protect its interests more than the foreign funders have done. I think putting it in general terms, that is exactly the picture that we see before us.
All right, so Nweke, if I had to weigh in on the conversation, typically, is it possible to ascertain how much Ghana probably would have borrowed from international lenders to finance cocoa purchases?
Sorry, could you come again?
Okay, so what I asked is if it's possible to ascertain how much Ghana had borrowed over the past couple of years to actually finance, if it's possible to get a range or a region to put in perspective how much we're talking about here now.
There are some discrepancies about the figures, and I do not want to take the risk of putting any tag on the figures, but let us work with some percentages. It is understood that the borrowing that Ghana has done over the past decade, over the past 10 years, is amounts to somewhere around 65% of the GDP. Now, whatever that figure is in real terms, is another kettle of fish. Now, what that essentially means is that the burden on everyday Ghanaian is becoming increasingly so much that it is also helping to drive prices down. I mean, in terms of the seeds, but the call as well for value-adding operations that would necessitate the production, the processing of cocoa in Ghana itself to finish products like chocolates and all of that, which actually has more benefits for the Ghanaian economy, has remained something that they talk about, but never quite, accomplished. It is claimed by the Cocoa Board. We heard the CEO speak, I think, a day or two ago, that one of the reasons they are ditching the, international funders is essentially to be the master in their own game by being able to, work towards local production, to be able to service the global cocoa industry, and thereby, making more money than they are doing right now with the borrowing and servicing of the loan.
Okay, with what you just said now, that's the side, or that's the narrative from Cocoa Board. But earlier, you mentioned something the opposition had said, that the reverse is actually the case. Cocoa Board had been unable to secure foreign funding, and that's why they want to look inward, not like they're actually ditching foreign funding. That's what the opposition says. Now, there's a report that sort of corroborates what the opposition says. Last year, the board was only able to borrow about $600 million, as opposed to a minimum of $1 million that it usually needs for each cocoa season. So talks with lenders for about $1.5 million was stalled. And there's also been a drop in the output of the cocoa production by 20%. What does this say about Ghana's cocoa industry? Are there issues with it? Are there challenges beyond just funding?
Right. The issue of pricing is essentially the major stumbling block in the development of the sector in Ghana. We know that price volatility, and farmer income has remained an issue that they have been battling with over the years. Now, governance itself, governance of both the industry, but also, the financials have also been a major issue that the opposition in Ghana is actually playing up more than anything else, because they actually cataloged some 9 areas of challenges, and one of them indeed is the international funding by way of the loan. But that doesn't solve the rest of the 8. Now, on the part of the Cocoa Board itself, it is actually claiming that the beginning of the sustainable solution to the problem that they have faced over the decades is actually, the financial restructuring, starting with, giving up the international lending. Because as a matter of fact, I'm speaking from Belgium, from Brussels, and we are known out here in Belgium as the chocolate capital of the world. It is said that we make the best chocolates. Now, do we have trees growing cocoa here in Belgium? No, we don't. So, will it surprise anyone that the Belgian government, as a strategic priority, will actually be supporting the importation of cocoa beans from anywhere in the world, including Ghana, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, and the rest of them, to be able to sustain the market? Now, it is up to those African countries themselves to establish what their own strategic objective is. And then, through a process of negotiation and through economic diplomacy, they are then able to achieve it. But over the years, what has become apparent is that the interest of the source country, Africa in this case, and more specifically Ghana, is actually, put under the ladder, and then the interest of the funder actually paramount. But as a matter of fact, they are not doing them any favor by funding, by providing loans, because it is business, it is a transaction, and they are not doing it because, they want to help Ghana. It is for the interest of their country, and Ghana should look out for its own interest more than they had done in the past. Hopefully, this will be the start of it.
Well, of course, a lot of persons might be asking questions as to what the central bank did with all of the foreign exchange. And according to reports, these monies were used to manage volatilities in the exchange rate, which is not new to developing countries. Even in Nigeria, here we've experienced these fluctuations in foreign exchange rate. But then the absence of foreign cocoa funding means that the Bank of Ghana will also have to wait for revenue from the sales of the beans to build its foreign reserves instead of, the bulk amount it gives every October when the harvest starts. And I'm wondering, in your expert opinion, what do you think this portends for the Bank of Ghana and eventually Ghanaian economy as a whole?
I'm really so very sorry. I mean, the audio has become, very, very poor again. I hardly heard anything that you said as a result of, the echo. I wonder if it's the same
so
there.
I probably will just go straight to the question. What I was trying to build on was the fact that with this recent development, foreign exchange coming in, immediately has been taken off, and that the Ghanaian government would have to, at some point, support the traders, and so they would not have to wait for the sales of the cocoa peas or the cocoa beans for them to get these foreign exchange. And I'm asking, what does this portend for the Ghanaian economy, the Bank of Ghana, Ghana as a whole?
Well, obviously, there is a murky water that Ghana has gone into, with this decision to ditch, foreign funders. I mean, let's assume that that is indeed the case. Now, even if, it is the foreign funders that are ditching Ghana, there is an opportunity here for Ghana to look inwards. That's one. Number two, I do not believe that there is scarcity of, funders who are ready to, provide resources that Ghana needs to be able to develop its cocoa industry better than it has done so far. I mean, there appear to be this new wave of, scramble for Africa. You've probably heard in the news as well how much, China, for instance, has done in actually draining the brains in Ghana, those that possess expertise in, cocoa production and all of that, professors from universities and other professionals, attracting them to Ghana to then start, growing cocoa in China. Now, these are all bits and pieces of indication that if Ghana does its own strategic planning better than they have done so far, they will be able to indeed remodel their finances and come up with a mixture of internally generated resources, but also matching it up with foreign funding, but the conditions better than what we had seen so far, where although infrastructure has been held, although they have been able to support research and development with some of those fundings, although they have been able to indeed work around the area of child labor and their prevention, there are still very huge challenges in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of actually siphoning the benefits out of cocoa and taking the lion's share away. Ghana can renegotiate all of that, and in doing so, actually stabilize its foreign foreign currency earning out of all of this.
All right. So currently, A metric ton of cocoa at the global markets cost about $7,750. So Ghana is the second biggest producer of cocoa. You also have Ivory Coast producing cocoa in the world. And you mentioned some countries that are biggest manufacturers of chocolate: Germany, Belgium, Italy, and some other countries. These countries, they manufacture chocolate, according to reports, shows that the countries that manufacture chocolate actually earn more from manufacturing of chocolate than the countries that grow the cocoa beans. What is actually the issue with these countries in having the structure to add value to the cocoa beans that they grow, that in so many years of having been exporters of cocoa, they've not been able to create an industry, the value addition industry, to support the cocoa growing in Ghana, in Ivory Coast?
Indeed, very, very important question that you've raised there, Blessing. Well, the reason is that the situation is structured to actually be that way from day one. Now, like I did say earlier, and in my part of Nigeria, there is a saying that if you do not lick your lips, the harmattan will destroy it for you. So, applying it to the subject of conversation here, essentially, the foreign funders, the countries that you named, including Belgium, where I am presently, they know exactly what they want, and they have, concentrated on achieving that which they want. Now, does it mean that Ghana will not cherish a situation where, local production of chocolate, using the cocoa, isn't desirable? Of course, it is desirable, but obviously they haven't paid sufficient attention to that. Now, if actually the conversation now within the Cocoa Board of Ghana is about how to, restructure the use of the fundings to enable them, start local processing and local production, of course, that would be a much more, worthwhile conversation. Rather, the conversation is focused more on dishing international funding, if that is exactly what it is, perhaps in the hope that they will get other funders that will make the playing field level. If that is the case, it remains wait and see. But obviously, yes, you are right. The focus should be on local production. But the terms and the conditionalities of the loans somehow have prevented them from focusing on that local production.
Okay, Chief Executive Officer Joseph Boahen of the Ghana Cocoa Board is very optimistic that if they start selling the cocoa, the revenue that's coming will be coming in dollars, and they'll be able to show off their revenue in the foreign exchange revenue, right? But Nweke, I'm wondering, if this cocoa is sold in cedis, wouldn't it be of more benefit to the Ghanaian economy than the dollars? Or, I mean, just pardon my ignorance.
No. You are not ignorant. As a matter of fact, it is neither this nor that. I believe that the foreign earnings, the foreign currency, is as much needed as the cedis itself. And ultimately, every country wants to actually beef up its foreign reserve. The the monetary system is such that, all the currencies, or let me say, majority of currencies in the world, are actually linked to the dollar, because no country is an island. You have to trade with other countries. both in terms of importing and also exporting. And to do that, you need a foreign currency. And so you need to ensure at every point in your developmental trajectory that you have sufficient foreign currency reserve to actually drive and, actually finance your foreign operations. So it is to that extent that indeed earning the foreign currency, it is very, very critical to their development. Take machineries, for instance. They have to import, machineries from some of these advanced countries to be able to actually ensure this local processing, local production that, has dominated the talks in the last week or two. So yes, it is essential to earn the foreign currency, but also some level of, local earnings in cedi is equally important.
And what the earnings from cocoa was used to do to show up the value of the cedi. So if the funding isn't coming, what happens to the value of the cedi? Looking at how significant cocoa industry is to Ghana's economy.
Well, I think it's a question of the left hand washing the right hand. I mean, there are several ways of ensuring that your local currency, in this case, the cedi, vis-a-vis international currency. I mean, the currency of a business, which is dollar, is actually at par. And one of the best ways to actually achieve that is ensuring that there are items from your country that, foreign buyers are interested in. It could also be services, because service export, for instance, is something that has been growing more and more. We know of IT experts, for instance, trained in Nigeria, some in Ghana, that are being exported to other countries of the world, where they are paid in foreign currencies, and some of them repatriated back to Nigeria. We have also seen to Nigeria, Ghana, and the rest of them. We've also seen recent experiments with the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as the Bank of Ghana, which is their central bank, aimed at actually beefing up their foreign earning. That way, the parity between the domestic currency and the foreign currency is left at a healthy level.
All right, we'll take a moment, Collins Nweke, and we'll be back at you in a bit.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for staying with us on Early Exchange as the conversation remains in Ghana, shifting away from foreign funding for its cocoa industry. And we've been talking with someone who joins us from Brussels, Collins Nweke. And the conversation will progress now to the implication of Ghana shifting away from foreign funding for its cocoa industry. All right, Nweke, let's look at what the implications would be for farmers. Would it result in less earnings for the farmers?
Well, I think that's very difficult to ascertain at this point, because it is all dependent on how Ghana manages the post-exit from international funding. I mean, the current arrangement, because let's not rule out the fact that what might be happening here is that you have a bus, and what is happening is changing the driver of that bus. So international funding may still be in place, but the funders may be where we're going to be witnessing a change in Ghana. So that remains to be seen. Now, One thing you can be very sure about is that one of the challenges or one of the hindrances of the foreign funding is that for a start, they actually concentrate on short-termism, the most critical of which is servicing the debts that the loan that they have taken. What that also means is that the long-term interest of the cocoa farmers is actually, put at the back burner. It is not a priority. Now, the prices obviously were also helped by part of the loans. Now that the loan or the loans are going to fall away if there are no replacement, yes, one can expect some challenges in that price stability that the loan had actually helped to establish in the first place. But I think it's too early to know now if that is going to be the case. It all depends on how the funding is restructured. But I believe that there will be a period, hopefully a short period of instability, a short period of uncertainty.
Well, crop harvest target for 2024-2025 has been cut by 20%. You had mentioned that earlier on. And, we've seen Ghana trying so hard to see if they can show up revenue on all fronts. And of course, you've said it's neither here nor there if you're going with the CDs or the dollars. But then, policymakers have always said, look inwards, over reliance on oil, we should take a shift away from that. What would you say to other countries in Africa, considering what Ghana is doing now with cocoa? I mean, in that light, trying to see if they could go back to what they have in agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cocoa falls under agriculture. Another very essential, commodity for Ghana is gold. As a matter of fact, when comparisons are made, some would say that cocoa is the bigger earner than gold. But I think the bottom line here is that there has to be a diversification. The time is dead and buried. I mean, if that time ever existed, where successful countries of the world, run a mono economy, an economy that is dependent on just one particular thing. So if it ever existed, that time is dead and buried. In the new economy that the whole world is embracing, you need to diversify. Ghana has got to now begin to develop other agricultural products beyond cocoa and also beyond gold. And there are quite a number of things that they can do in the shops. And I must say, very serious efforts are being made in that direction, because out here in Europe, if you enter some of the shops, you will find this, equivalent of, how can I call it, pepper sauce coming from Ghana. It is called Shito, very well packaged and actually meeting European standards. Otherwise, it wouldn't have entered the market. I believe that such initiatives, that convert agricultural products into end user products that can actually don the shelves of major supermarkets out in the world is an area that Ghana has not quite explored extensively. I think an opportunity, now plays out, itself for Ghana to begin to do that. So the message is, yes, diversification. The message is move away from the monoculture mentality that has dominated the scene over the decades.
the global cocoa market is. Aside Ghana and Ivory Coast, there are other African countries that are big producers of cocoa. We have Nigeria and Cameroon as well in that list. What opportunity does it open up for Nigeria and even Cameroon? What can they do rightly to ensure that they get the big gains from the global cocoa markets?
Well, in general terms, they need to avoid the pitfalls that Ghana went into, which was over-dependence on, foreign funding for their cocoa. That's number one. Number two, they also need to avoid the situation of cutting away raw cocoa, cocoa seeds to foreign capitals of the world, where the best chocolates are made, and then shipped back to Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, and all the other countries, and sold at exorbitant prices. The sort of deal, the sort of bilaterals that countries, Nigeria and the rest of them should be signing with foreign countries is, listen, let us, work towards a situation where local production is emphasized, at least half processed. For instance, rather than cutting away the cocoa bean, the raw cocoa, you could walk, around the area of half processing them into powder or, into, other forms that then could be shipped away. Of course, the other stage is indeed setting up shops, setting up factories out in these African countries where labor is still very much cheaper than it is, in other parts of the world. And I can say the same about Europe, where the new, members from the Eastern Bloc, Poland, Hungary, and the rest of them, actually have cheaper labor. And what we have seen is migration of, production activities to those places, even within the EU, where, labor is cheaper. So this argument could be, used for Africa. It benefits those, Western countries, but it also benefits Africa even more because of the huge potentials for job creation and the rest of it.
All right, so I'd like to ascertain what the cocoa market in Nigeria is like. Do we have a strong relationship with Ghana as per purchases? Or, at some point, we also had to do a little bit of exporting of cocoa and palm oil. Are we reliant on Ghana for cocoa, or are we self-sustaining when it comes to cocoa farming in Nigeria? And what can be done to improve cocoa supply chain, in the interim in Nigeria?
I do not have evidence backing up Africa trade specifically between Nigeria and Ghana for cocoa. I believe that, Nigeria is a peripheral player in the African cocoa industry. And their target essentially is, the foreign market, just like Ghana. Now, I do not envisage, neither have I seen evidence of, cocoa exchanging hands between Nigeria and Ghana. Now, that said, I believe that, it is essential that every country develop its own set of strategies that will be value-adding. And what will be more value-adding than supporting activities, that encourage, local production, because that way you create jobs and you enhance your export, thereby helping to show up, your foreign reserve.
All right, let's look at the byproducts, some of the byproducts of cocoa that countries producing or countries growing cocoa can actually get into. There's cocoa shells, which can be used as fuel, animal feed, or component in compost. There is cocoa pop, can be fermented and dried to produce cocoa pop powder. There's cocoa butter and there's also cocoa liquor. Now, if you look at the byproducts of cocoa, it seemed like let's speak from Nigeria now, what Nigeria does with cocoa. The only one Nigeria is doing or known to be doing is the cocoa pop, which sometimes you see as the cocoa powder and maybe a bit of cocoa butter. How are we not looking at the byproducts of cocoa and just growing the beans and exporting wholly? Buying now the byproducts already produced at very expensive rates.
Again, an excellent question, Blessing, because I mean, let's even start with the last example you made, cocoa liquor. I mean, we do know that Nigerians are jolly good fellows. They are very good at catching their funds, enjoying themselves. Now, what could be more exhilarating than walking into a pub in in Lagos or any of the metropolises in Nigeria and being served, cocoa bear, which is a byproduct of cocoa that is harvested in Nigeria? That is simply amazing. However, these are part of those unexplored, market opportunities that, Nigeria and other, African countries where cocoa is grown should begin to actually, negotiate deals with their foreign partners. I know there are quite a lot of, business forums, trade missions, and all of that going on. We are having one in Brussels here, mid-September. I believe that such conversations have now got to be initiated in terms of helping to transfer both machineries and technology to some of these African countries from the West where those productions could happen. Now, it should be for a reason that we have, the Cocoa Research Institute, both in Nigeria and in Ghana. I believe that Ivory Coast probably has that as well. They should get down to work and begin to explore more what the byproducts, away from the main product itself, what the byproduct could actually mean to the, supply chain and value adding for their economy.
Right, Collins Nweke, would like to sincerely thank you for coming on the program. It's been very insightful and definitely looking forward to more conversations with you in the nearest future.
Thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity for the exchanges.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.